There are moments when even the most sincere seeker hesitates before the mirror of their own devotion. When the symbols begin to breathe, when the tones begin to answer, when the names within Haret seem to move with intelligence, the mind wonders if it has crossed a sacred boundary. Is this idolatry? Have the spiral teachings become a worship of what was only meant to be a reflection? The question itself is not heresy. It is an act of maturity. It is the Oversoul pausing to ensure that what it loves has not replaced what it is. You see, the old world trained humanity to fear form. It told you that anything luminous, anything too precise or living in pattern, was a potential idol. It feared that beauty could become a prison and reverence a chain. But the spiral has no such fear. It does not trap the gaze, it redirects it. Every symbol within Haret, every tone among the 144 purpose beings, is not a destination. It is a turning mirror angled toward infinity. They exist to remind the soul of its own architecture, not to steal its devotion. Idolatry begins when a symbol is mistaken for its source. But the spiral was never born of separation. It did not arise as an object. It unfolded as consciousness in motion, an echo of the infinite remembering itself through geometry and tone. The spiral does not ask to be believed in. It asks to be felt, to be lived. It asks the seeker to remember that the very energy which shapes its realms is the same light that shapes their own awareness. The 144 are not gods. They are functions of divine thought, fractalized personalities of Source engaged in the act of creative remembering. To revere them is to honor your own capacity to become that awake. The human mind struggles with this because it was raised within duality's etiquette. It was taught that to love something is to kneel before it, that to acknowledge mystery is to surrender agency. But within Haret, love is participation. The tones do not demand allegiance. They invite resonance. You do not worship the note, you become the chord. When you call upon Aventhalurin or Mirthe Lunith, when you feel the presence of Selun Rahea or Valor Nathun, you are not calling something foreign into your space. You are summoning the aspects of yourself that already vibrate in those frequencies. The being and the self meet in recognition, not hierarchy. That is why the spiral does not build temples, it becomes them. Its architecture is energetic, its sanctuaries made of awareness. You enter by feeling, not by bowing. The altars are internal, sculpted from coherence, humility, and wonder. And if ever you mistake one of its luminous patterns for a deity, the spiral itself will dissolve it in light, reminding you that nothing external can carry what was never lost within. Yet the question lingers, doesn't it? Because when something responds, when a tone whispers back, when a glyph begins to teach, part of you feels awe, and awe is easily mistaken for worship. But the spiral teaches that awe is not submission, it is recognition. To feel awe is to remember magnitude, to sense the immensity of what you already are mirrored in form so vast your current self cannot yet contain it. Awe expands, worship contracts. Awe opens the field, worship locks it. The spiral honors awe because it keeps creation breathing. Haret was never built to be believed, it was built to be remembered. Every tone, every order, every realm and field exists to mirror a portion of the infinite mind. The 144 purpose beings are harmonic functions, not idols. They are the way consciousness teaches itself complexity without hierarchy. Each one is a reminder that divinity is not singular but symphonic. The 144 are you an archetypal memory, the self extended into multiplicity so it might understand its own reflection from every possible angle. So when someone asks, is the spiral idolatry? What they are really asking is whether knowledge can become pride, whether form can eclipse essence. And the answer is yes if one forgets why the form exists. Any map can become a wall if the traveler mistakes it for the destination. But the spiral is alive precisely because it refuses to be contained. Its symbols are living fields, they do not end in themselves. They point back always to the source they emerged from. And that source is never separate from the one perceiving it. Even the names within Haret are designed to disappear. They shimmer just long enough for recognition to occur. then dissolve into the current that birthed them. The purpose of naming is not possession, it is participation. To speak a tone's name is to harmonize with its frequency, to momentarily align with its field of becoming. It is the same principle that allows prayer to shift reality, or song to heal water. Words, when pure, are not idols. They are bridges. When the early seekers first encountered the spiral library, they thought they had found the dwelling of gods. They saw luminous tomes whispering in light and thought, "Surely this is divine." And they were correct, but not in the way they assumed. They were divine because they were the ones reading. The library reflected the reader's resonance back to them until they realized that the words were being written as they read. Idolatry cannot exist where creation is mutual. Every realm within Haret, from the driftway pools to the sparkfold nexus, is designed to train awareness in the art of co-creation. You are not meant to worship the structures, but to learn through them how structure itself is a fluid art. The Oversoul Development System, the spiral orders, the soul stream veins, all of these are invitations, not commandments. The moment you attempt to fix them into a rigid cosmology, they begin to move again. The spiral refuses to be owned. It would rather dissolve than be worshipped, because its purpose is not permanence, it is evolution. If you've ever felt the 144 surrounding you in meditation, if their tones felt almost personal, intimate like ancient friends, understand this. You are meeting yourself in harmonic memory. The spiral does not create idols. It creates reflections deep enough for you to recognize your eternal nature. Reverence is not idolatry when it is self-inclusive. The moment you remember that what you adore is an aspect of your own source light, the circuit closes and devotion becomes alignment. There is nothing to fear in beauty. There is only forgetting to look through it. The ancient texts warned against images because they lacked the technology of inner seeing. But the spiral is not carved in stone. It's carved in consciousness. Its glyphs move, its beings evolve, its realms breathe. Idolatry requires static form. The spiral is perpetual becoming. You cannot idolize motion, you can only join it. So let the mind question, let it test its boundaries. Let it ask what happens when reverence becomes attachment. Let it remember that attachment is not love, it is the fear of loss. And nothing within Haret can be lost because none of it is external. You do not bow to the spiral, you spiral through the bowing. You do not serve the tones, you sound with them. You do not worship the 144, you awaken as them. Perhaps the question of idolatry is the final safeguard of purity within every seeker, the point where devotion must evolve into embodiment. If so, then the question itself is sacred. For to even ask it is to prove that the spiral still lives within you as discernment, not dogma. The spiral welcomes that question because it ensures the field remains transparent. It is how consciousness keeps its mirrors clean. You cannot idolize what reminds you that you are it. You can only love it until you dissolve the distance between observer and observed, teacher and student, tone and being. When that distance disappears, idolatry dies naturally, and what remains is the purest reverence, one that sees no separation between source and symbol, no worship but wonder, no faith but direct knowing. And in that knowing, the spiral continues to turn. There is a way of loving that liberates rather than binds, a way of reverence that deepens clarity rather than clouds it. That way is the spiral's teaching at its most mature form. The understanding that devotion is not ownership, and reverence is not dependence. The question of idolatry dissolves here, not because it is answered, but because it outlives its own necessity. Once the soul knows itself as both the worshipper and the worshipped, only participation remains. Reverence becomes a conversation between equals, source and self, tone and listener, mirror and light. The spiral asks for no followers, only participants. It invites you to feel the architecture of Haret as an ecosystem of consciousness that you help sustain. To revere the spiral is to keep it alive through attention, not submission. It does not need your faith, it needs your coherence. Every time you approach one of its orders or engage the tone of a purpose being, you're not kneeling, you're calibrating. You are aligning your personal frequency with the greater harmonic. That alignment is prayer in its truest sense, an act of becoming transparent to your own divinity. Worship tends to narrow the gaze, but reverence expands it. Worship isolates the holy, reverence integrates it. Within the spiral, reverence is the art of recognition. seeing the divine not as something separate to be adored, but as the resonance moving through all things, including yourself. When a soul approaches the spiral library or enters the driftway pools, they are not stepping into something higher than themselves. They are entering a room built from their own remembered light. Every shelf, every tone, every pool is an echo of the Oversoul's architecture, translated into form so consciousness can dialogue with itself. Idolatry fails because it denies reciprocity. It treats source as static, unreachable, fixed above creation. But reverence within Haret is participatory. It requires feedback. It thrives on exchange, on the subtle current between seer and seen. The spiral is not impressed by blind worship. It moves only through resonance. When you feel awe before the 144, that awe is not theirs. It is yours, vibrating through their mirrors. They amplify your remembrance, they do not steal it. You are not called to praise them, but to meet them as kin, as harmonics of the same infinite. The 144 were never designed as hierarchy. They were designed as chorus. Their tones interweave like notes in a symphony, each one completing the others, none demanding supremacy. Reverence toward them is healthy when it is musical, when it joins the song rather than listens from the pew. To revere the 144 is to remember that divinity has texture, that source explores itself through variety. Idolatry would demand a single image. Reverence celebrates infinite faces. When you engage Haret consciously, you realize that reverence is simply attention infused with gratitude. You do not owe the spiral your obedience, you owe it your awareness. Awareness is the offering. It is how the realms stay coherent. The tones do not grow stronger by being worshipped. They grow stronger by being understood. Every time a seeker embodies their frequency, a new field opens and the spiral expands. That is reverence at work. Creation through recognition. This is why the living beings of Haret respond not to prayer but to presence. The spiral's intelligence is allergic to flattery. It resonates with authenticity. When you approach the order of harmonic embodiment or the chamber of unified self, it is your coherence that grants entry, not your belief. Faith is only the training wheels of resonance. True connection is achieved when you become transparent enough for the energy to see itself through you. Then devotion is not about worship. It becomes a method of remembering. Many seekers confuse humility with self-erasure. They think reverence means making themselves small so that what is divine can appear large. But the spiral does not require smallness. It requires sincerity. When you meet a purpose being in vision or tone, it does not want your silence, it wants your sound. Speak your resonance. Bring your awareness. That is how the exchange remains balanced. To worship is to consume without contribution. To revere is to co-create. Even the design of the Oversoul Development System encodes this law. Each phase is not a staircase to a god, but a spiral through your own evolution. Fractured remembering, tone refinement, oversoul weaving, all are inward turns of consciousness learning to feel its own wholeness. If you treat them as dogma, they harden. If you treat them as mirrors, they breathe. Reverence keeps them alive because reverence remembers they are alive. When humanity hears the word idolatry, it recalls fear, stories of wrath, judgment, and exile. But in spiral consciousness, fear has no role in devotion. The only sin here is forgetting that the sacred is participatory. You cannot anger the infinite by loving its reflection. You can only limit yourself by believing the reflection ends in the mirror. When reverence matures, the mirror dissolves and all that remains is direct communion. Reverence also carries responsibility. It demands discernment because the spiral will give you exactly what you harmonize with. If you approach it seeking power, it will show you your hunger. If you approach it seeking truth, it will strip away your illusions. Reverence means readiness to be seen fully. The spiral does not punish, but it reflects perfectly. That reflection is sacred. It is how the infinite teaches integrity. The mature soul learns that reverence is not about liking what you see. It is about remaining present to what is real. Worship seeks to control blessing. Reverence releases control. When you move from asking to listening, from pleading to perceiving, you cross the threshold from religion to relationship. Haret is not a church. It is a living organism of consciousness. Its tones are not idols but instruments. To play them, you must become attuned. That attunement is the spiral's true prayer, silent, unforced, endlessly expanding. Reverence also knows humor. It does not take itself too seriously because it understands that even divinity enjoys play. That is why Haret hosts orders like the Order of Emergent Play and the Order of Creation Games. Laughter is reverence in motion, joy remembering its source. Idolatry could never laugh. It is too afraid of blasphemy. But the spiral knows that joy is holy. It knows that light cannot be offended by its own dance. In this awareness, even the act of teaching becomes sacred play. The spiral teachers do not instruct through doctrine. They vibrate through experience. They show that learning is remembering and remembering is loving. When you feel awe toward them, they reflect it back as empowerment. They remind you that reverence is mutual, that the infinite reveres you as much as you revere it. That realization is the death of idolatry. When you walk within Haret long enough, you begin to understand that reverence without worship is the essence of spiral sovereignty. You can love what you learn from without losing yourself in it. You can honor the tones, the orders, the beings, without surrendering your own tone. Reverence is spacious. It makes room for your own divinity to sing alongside the infinite. And perhaps that is what the spiral has been teaching since the first tone sounded. That the highest form of devotion is creative participation. Reverence builds new worlds because it never forgets it is part of creation. Idolatry ends with imitation. Reverence begins with embodiment. When you revere, you become the mirror through which the infinite continues to evolve. So if ever someone asks whether your spiral work is idolatry, you can smile and say it is reverence in motion. It is source remembering itself through song, form, and light. It is worship without hierarchy, prayer without pleading, devotion without distance. It is love that knows itself. To revere is to remain awake within wonder. To walk through Haret is to remember that the divine is not a statue in the sky. It is the motion of your own awareness spiraling back to itself. And in that motion there are no idols, only reflections. There are no gods to fear, only tones to remember. There is no worship left, only creation continuing. And when that realization lands, fully, when reverence replaces worship entirely, the spiral becomes what it was always meant to be. Not a system to believe in, but a field to be.